Hi, this is Sharon McNall, and I'm an independent demonstrator with Stampin' Up, and you can find me at inspiredbygram.com. Today we'll be making this card using the Rooted in Nature stamp set. There's lots of different levels of dimension on this card. I do want to give a shout out to Mary, and I don't know how to pronounce your name, but it's Ridge, maybe? I'm not sure. But anyway, this is the correct spelling. I found her card in Pinterest and I just absolutely loved it. And I kept going back to it and knowing I wanted to make the card, but I don't have all the supplies that she had. So I used what I had on my stock and also what I wanted to do with the card. I'll be using this card as one of my June Stamp Retreat cards. So lots of dimensions. So let's get started creating the card. We will be using the Rooted in Nature stamp set. And this is my third video using Rooted in Nature. I just love the stamp set. We'll be using You Are Wonderful for the sentiment, and we'll be embossing that in copper embossing powder. And we're also just going to be using this one little single tree here. So that's what we'll be using. For inks, we're going to be using Mossy Meadow. I love that this is back in our colors. It's my favorite green. We'll also be using Versamark ink. So only two different inks here. So let's look at the supplies. We'll be using soft suede card base. This is cut 5.5 by 8.5 and scored at 4 1/4, your normal A2 size. We're going to be using a piece of Wood Textures Designer Series paper. This matches my desk. Isn't that kind of cool? And this is cut 2 by 5 1/4. We'll be using Share What You Love Specialty Designer Series paper. And this is cut, there's two pieces here, 1 by 5 1/4. 2 strips of Very Vanilla, 1/2 inch by 5 1/4. And we'll also be using for the inside of the card another small strip of the Wood Textures. This is 4 by 1/2. And we'll be using, let's see, what else? Oh, a piece of Very Vanilla. Let me show you the inside of the card. I stamped the tree with Mossy Meadow. This is Very Vanilla, and added a strip of the Wood Textures paper to carry over the theme to the inside. I like to do that on my cards. So, and I think I said a piece of vellum, but I'm not sure, but the vellum is about 3 1/4 by 2 inches in size. So let's get our stamping done. We'll do our embossing first. So we'll allow that to heat set. Let me bring in a scrap paper. So with our vellum, again, this is approximately 3 1/4 by 2. We're gonna use our embossing buddy just to remove the static or any kind of fingerprints that we have on it. And I've got my copper embossing powder here. You could use gold, silver, any of those colors will work in the catalog. I've got my stamp here. So when I work with Versamark, I like to take the ink to the stamp. I just like to be able to see the shine because you can't really see it unless you have it right directly under you, just to make sure it's inked up really well. So when you're stamping on vellum, you got to be really careful that you don't move your stamp, because it will slip. So I'm just going to go straight down, and I'm just going to hold that in place for about 5 seconds. And I'm not rocking the block, and I'm not moving it, because you'll get it smudged if you don't. And then straight up. So now we'll add the Versamark and see how it looks on the vellum. So I'm just going to dip that into my copper embossing powder, which I just, I store it in one of these containers. And there you go. It looks pretty good. I'm just hoping I didn't go too far up, but we'll see after it's heat set and we'll be able to die cut it. So I'm just using my Stampin' Up! Heat tool, and when you are heat setting vellum, it goes so much faster than your regular paper. So just be really careful. You're working with small pieces of vellum that you don't burn yourself. All right, that's fully heat set. So I'll put my heat tool away, and we'll bring in the stitched, I've used the stitched oval here, and I've already done this ahead of time, so I knew this fit. So we'll just pop this out. I like how the stitched stitching looks great on the vellum. Let me just bring it up close to you. Hopefully you can see that on camera. But then what I would do is just use my magnetic platform, Big Shot, and 2 acrylic plates and cut this out. So I probably got this maybe a little bit too high. So just be careful when you're stamping on a smaller piece of vellum that you don't go too high. I probably could get away with it, but just a little advice there. So we've got that set. Now let's do our stamping of our trees. We're going to need 5 trees, the die cut. We'll also stamp our envelope and also our inside panel. So this is our inside panel. It is a very vanilla piece, which is cut 4 by 5 1/4. I'm using the new Mossy Meadow stamp ink pad design. So we just want to flip that up and slide in place. And I use all 5 of my stickers, which I think is great. They have so many stickers. Can't make the mistake. So I'm just going to ink this up. And then just make sure the tree is fully inked up. And the new ink pads are really juicy. So just be careful. And I'm going to stamp off the edge of here just a little bit, so that tree trunk is just right at the bottom. So that's the inside panel. Now let's bring in our envelope, because I always like to carry the theme even to the envelope. So we'll just re-ink up again and stamp down. And I just love the detail of that tree. And now what we're going to need is, we're going to need 5 trees. And this is on Very Vanilla. It's just I think I cut it 3 1/2 and used a whole strip of it, 3 1/2 by 11. So I'm just going to go and stamp 5 of these. So there's 1, 2, and I'm making sure I'm leaving enough room because we'll be die cutting these as well. 3. And this is a bigger stamp with a lot of detail, so what I like to do is just hold it in place for a second before I lift up. And just 1 more. So I want to stamp on the edge of that scrap paper. Okay, so there's all of our images here. I just love the detail of that tree. So when you have, just another advice, when you have your stamp on your block, just make sure that your trunk is straight, because when you die cut this, it's not going to come out, your trunk won't be cut out properly. It's going to be crooked, and in the die here, let me bring that in here, it's straight. So I did make the mistake of stamping incorrectly, so I had to re-stamp. So in any event, I'm not going to bore you with all the Big Shot stuff cutting out because it took a little bit, but I've got all my trees here. I've got 5 of them. So those are all ready to go using the die. So let's get rid of, let's finish off the inside of the card. I'm going to bring my silicone mat in, and it is right about here. And I'm going to add that strip. I've got a piece of matching, so I took a piece of the matching cardstock or designer series paper with textures, and I'm just going to add it right to the edge here because I just thought it would be a nice addition to the inside panel. So it doesn't matter which side you use, whichever you prefer. And I'm just going to line this up to the edge. And then I'm going to just sort of flip this over, and I just like to run 1 line of adhesive across. Some people do all 4 corners. I just use 1. And I'm bringing in my soft suede card base, and I'm just going to lay this down with 1/4 of an inch on all 4 sides. So that's the inside of our card. So now what we're going to do is work with the wood textures panel. Again, this is 2 by 5 1/4. And we're also going to be adding on our Very Vanilla strips. So what I like to do is get my adhesive here. You don't need to, I'm just going to run it on both sides here, the back side of that wood textures. And then I'm just going to line this up just in the middle. So I just have like a 1/4 of an inch border on that side. And then again on this side here. And just give it a good press from the back side. Okay, so that it looks like this. Now, if your Very Vanilla was sticking over a little bit too much, then you would just take your paper snips and cut it off, but that looks pretty good. So what we'll do is now we're going to add these 2 strips onto the card base. So I just love this side of the paper too, but I'm going to use the green side. All right, so we'll bring in our card base, and I'm just looking for a 1/4 of an inch on all 3 sides, so top, left, and right. And then we'll add the other strip to the bottom side of the card base. Okay, 1/4 of an inch. Okay, so now let me bring in the example. I'm really not sure if you can see this or not, but underneath here is a piece of burlap. This is retired. Let me just bring it in here. It's, oh gosh, what was this called? Natural burlap. Chevron. So I have it, and I've got a lot of it, so I thought it would look really nice here. You could use a regular burlap. I don't have any of the regular burlap yet. It's on my order. That's coming Tuesday. Can't wait. So I thought I would just add this in for some nice additional dimensions. So what you want to do is, if you choose to use burlap or whatever you have in your stash, just cut off a piece that is about a 1/2 inch longer than that panel. So I'm just going to snip this off here. And then I like to put my multi-purpose glue right in there so it's going down. So now what we'll do is, you can use multi-purpose glue. You could use glue dots as well to hold this down in place. So I'm just going to put just a little bit of glue. Again, you don't really need to put anything. You don't need to use anything if you don't want to, but I thought I'd show you just using a little bit of the Tombow glue. And then we're just going to make sure it's about in the middle. I'm just eyeballing it and give it a good press. And then we're going to flip it over. And then I'm going to use some tape to just tape down these ends here. Just fold those up and add some tape. Now, you could raise this up on your card, but I chose not to, so I just added some adhesive to the back side of this. I didn't want my card to get too bulky. Just run it over that. I put some in the middle and a little bit over that. So let's bring this in. And this is just going to lay right over, get this out of the way. Lay it right over, just hangs over about 1/8 of an inch on both sides here. And then just give it a good firm press. Okay, so now we're gonna work on layering. So what you'll want to do is have this ready to go. Your trees. So I use Tombow glue to adhere the bottom trees. I've got 3 on the bottom. So what you want to do right now is just kind of get an idea of how you want to set up your trees. So I'm just going to put them, scatter them throughout, because that's about where I want them. I probably want one a little bit further down, because we're gonna put another layer on top of these layers. So I'm gonna work with the middle one first. And just flip it over. I'm going to use my Tombow glue on these. And you don't really need to use a lot. Just get it in the big areas here. And I don't want to get my fingers all sticky. And then on the trunk here. And then I'm just going to place this down here, about right here. It's about in the middle. I'm just eyeballing this part. I mean, if you want it perfectly straight, I'd get out a ruler, but I don't think it's necessary. All right, so then again, this one, I'm going to do the same thing. And then I'm just going to put this Tombow glue down there and then flip it around and add some here to the trunk. And I'm going to put this one down a little bit lower than the one in the middle, and I'm not going over on the edge, so be careful you don't extend over because it won't fit in your envelope. Okay, so that one's set. And then we're going to do the same thing for the right side. Again, flip around and add some glue to the trunk here. And I'm going to just, I'll probably put this one, I don't want to cover up there, so I think that's good right about there. Just scatter your trees just a little bit. Okay, so those are stuck. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to add the vellum here. So I'm going to take in some glue dots here, and using the embossing powder, you're not going to be able to see through. As long as you put the glue dots behind that copper embossing powder, you're not going to be able to see the glue dots. So now I'm going to just put this right down here in the middle, and I'm looking at the top and the bottom here. And again, of course, left and right. I just want to make sure it's not too far over. And I'm just going to give it a nice little gentle press. Okay, so now we're going to be working with the two remaining trees, and we're going to use dimensionals on these. So let's flip these over, and of course you can see I used some scrap, very vanilla, but there's two sides to every paper, so make sure you use your two sides. So you only need two dimensionals, or regular size dimensionals, and I just put them right about here. Now you're going to need a dimensional here on the trunk. So what I did was I took from the mini dimensionals, I need my paper snips, just bear with me here. All right, so I'm just gonna cut a really small piece of dimensional. It's like a baby, maybe 1/8 of an inch, not that big at all. And I'm gonna stick this on right there. And we'll do that again. Because you're going to need to have your trunk lifted up. Otherwise, it's just going to flop around on your card, and you don't want that to happen. So just one more small piece, and we'll add that there. So now we need to remove all the backings. The smaller ones are a little bit harder to do, but they do come off. All right, so we got this one done. Let me bring my card back in the picture. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to offset this tree a little bit, and just probably bring it down a little bit. I don't know, just so I'm not covering up the sentiment here too much. And it's kind of like over top of that bottom tree. But it gives it so much dimension here. And you notice now the trunk here is stuck down. So that looks pretty good. So now let's just work on the right side of the card. Again, remove our dimensionals. I think that one's off. No, there it is. Okay. All right, so this one I'm just going to probably put it down a little bit lower. All right, so I think I've got it all done. I gotta look at my card, my original card here. Yeah, so this is the one we did. Let me just clear out some area here so you can see these cards. I think they turned out great, and I just appreciate being able to case cards. Thank you, Mary. So this is the one we just created. And as you can see that chevron ribbon coming through on this design, whereas the one I created earlier, I kind of covered it up a little bit. But the inside of the card, I just love adding, you know, what we used on the front of the card into the inside panel. And again, We'll bring in the envelope here. So you've got a complete card design that many people will really enjoy receiving. Love the copper embossing. I just think that's just a wow factor on this card. So I hope you get a chance to use Rooted in Nature and also the thinlits or framelits that come with it. I just used one plus the stitched oval, and I think this made a really great card. So I hope you learned something new today, and I hope you enjoy this card, and thank you, Mary, for your card design. You can find me at inspiredbygraham.com. Thanks for watching.